In this video, we are on part 3 of looking at the solutions for test 5 of the fall 2013 AP Physics. On the bonus part is, in this case, our problem, and in the first part it does a problem that was worked in the text. I believe it was page 60. There were several homework problems on this, including a water spout problem where you were to find the two angles. So what it's doing is checking your ability to do a simple derivation, a skill that you need to have. We've got a projectile setting here like this. We have an axis. This projectile is fired out of this cannon, some v0 at some angle theta. It goes and follows a parabolic path, and it lands some distance here, x. So it started at x not equals 0, and it ends at some x, and this is y. And they ask and say, show that in order for this to occur, that you have to set your cannon up at this angle, where the angle is given by this formula, the arc sine of the distance times gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, the acceleration of gravity, divided by the initial speed squared of the cannon, divided by 2. Now it turns out there are two solutions to this arc sine, so there are in fact two angles for every angle except 45 degrees. In part B, asks you to calculate that for some specific numbers. Main thing to know is that in the x direction we have this component of the initial velocity, v0 cosine theta, and our y component of the initial velocity is v0 sine theta. The distance traveled is equal to the speed in the x directions times t, which gives v0 cosine theta times the time. I will call this equation 1. And then over here we have y equal y0 plus vy0 times t plus 1/2 ayt squared. Now in our problem, the projectile starts and ends at y equals 0. This gives us that 0 is equal to vy0 minus g over 2t times t has to be 0. Here I've factored out a t. In order for this to be 0, either the term in the parentheses must be 0 or the term on the outside has to be 0. Now the term on the outside is 0 at t equals 0. That is when the projectile is first shot. That's not the solution we want. We want the solution where t is greater than 0 and it hits over here. So that means this term in the parentheses must be 0. This enables us to find a formula for the time. So from this we have 0 is equal, I'm going to plug in my formula for vy0, v0 sine theta minus g over 2t is 0. Alright, this gives us that t is equal to 2 v0 sine theta over g. I'll call that equation 2. I now want to take equation 2 and I want to substitute that into equation 1. Substitute 2 into 1. So I have x is equal to, I have a 2 v0 sine theta over g being put up here. This gives me a v0 squared over g times 2 sine theta cosine theta. But 2 sine theta cosine theta is equal to the sine of 2 theta. This is a trig identity that you should know and put to memory. It's extremely useful. There are more general ones called addition and subtraction, where you add angles. And that's in fact what's happening. This is really the sine of theta plus theta. It just happens to be the same. And so it simplifies on the left-hand side. There's a more general formula for adding when you have the sine of theta plus phi, where phi could be something else. But this one shows up a lot, and so you should put that to memory. And of course you needed it for your homework as well as being done in the book, so you should have known it for this bonus. Now, using that, I then plug this in and say x is equal to v naught squared over g sine of 2 theta. I want to solve for the sine of 2 theta. So therefore, the sine of 2 theta, well, not squared, 2 theta, is equal to xg over v naught squared. Therefore, 2 theta is the inverse sine of xg over v naught squared. And then the last step to get theta is just to divide by 2. Theta is equal to the inverse sine of xg over v naught squared. All of that divided by 2. And QED, quod erat demonstratum, that which was to be proved. Alright, so that's the proof for that part of the thing. A very useful thing to know. Now, you might note that this formula is like, oh, just memorize formula. Formula doesn't work in general for everything. For instance, it only works if you shoot and it hits on level ground. So somebody could put the thing up here somewhere with some h and ask you to develop the formula for that. You need to learn how to be able to read and apply math and do the algebra. If you really want to be able to do more than just lower level technician type work, you need to be able how to develop new knowledge on your own and be fluent with mathematics, especially not just numbers but symbols. Because symbols are when you're being asked, how do you find something you don't know? What if? If you have numbers, that means somebody already told you just what to do. Just go do this, 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 and this. And you want to build the skills to be able to do harder things, more advanced type of jobs in the world. Part B simply says to take that information and put it to use. So in doing that, we want to find first that the sine of minus 1, which is equal to our 2 theta, is xg over v naught squared, is the sine of 1250 meters, 12,500 meters, my fault, times 9.8 meters per second squared, divided by 765 meters per second, which is squared. If you plug that in into a calculator here, then what you're going to come up with is 2 answers. Now the calculator gives you 1. It gives you in the first quadrant 12.1 degrees. In other words, it's sitting here and saying, hey, look, one solution, that's one solution over here for 2 theta is that this height, which you tell it's equal to some number, because that's what the sine of 2 theta gives you. It says one answer here is that it's 12.1 degrees, but you should realize that there's a second answer. It would have exactly the same height if this angle were 2 theta. And in that case, that angle would be 180 degrees minus this, 12.1. So 180 degrees minus 12.1 degrees, which is 167.9 degrees. Therefore, theta is either 6 degrees approximately or 84 degrees. So those are the two answers. Remember, calculators give a single number, so they'll always put things in one quadrant, usually this quadrant or that, but certainly for the sign it's this quadrant and this quadrant. And it does not remember to know how to do that. It's kind of like taking the square root of 4. There's really two answers. Square root of 4 is 2 or minus 2, and it's just going to assume 1, the positive one. So you have to add the second solution. Notice that these two always add up to be 90 degrees. That's because when you divide these two, this becomes a 6, and the 180 divided by 2 becomes 90. Now, if the angle is 45, you get two answers, but they're both 45, because 45 plus 45 equals 90. Another interesting thing, so I'll kind of finish this thing off, what they're saying is that you can shoot it in a big looping path, or you can shoot it like that. In this path, it travels faster, but it's not in the air very long. Here, it doesn't travel very fast, but it's in a very long path. Of course, it doesn't quite right. It's got to be parabolic. So, but two different types, a mortar shell versus more like a bullet flies. All right, that finishes the test. Hopefully, that covers all your questions that you might have.